Jay's Prescription for Health. I am your host. I am located in Des Moines, Iowa. It is 11 a.m. Central on Wednesday, June 11th. So where are you guys listening from? I am live on Instagram and YouTube today. So happy Wednesday, you guys. And good morning to Diane and Judy and Jay. Thank you for all for joining. Where are you listening from? Today we are going to do a short segment on insulin resistance. Now, as a disclaimer, this is not medical advice. It's for information purposes only. So let's keep that in mind. You know, we are live. If you have questions, please don't hesitate to ask them, and I will try to get them as best I can. So we are live on YouTube and Instagram. So with that being said, we'll get started here. When we talk about insulin resistance, we can refer to insulin resistance from a sugar camp, or we can think about insulin resistance from the seed oil camp. And it's not that they're against each other, but they have different schools of thought on what is causing insulin resistance. For instance, if you think about insulin resistance as far as the sugar model is concerned, what comes to mind is that sugar is elevated, insulin goes up, and high insulin causes insulin resistance. Whereas from a seed oil perspective, it's the actual seed oils, which are the polyunsaturated fats, that the seed oils are the 3 S's, the 3 C's, rice bran, and grapeseed oil. So 3 S's, soy, safflower, and sunflower. And the 3 C's, cottonseed, canola, and corn. So when we discuss the seed oil theory to causing insulin resistance, we'll get to that. But first, let's just mention briefly about the sugar cause of insulin resistance. And it's probably the one that you're most familiar with. Vivian is listening from Toronto right now, and Jay is listening from Hyde Park, Utah, and is a Patriots fan. Nice. Still a Patriots fan. Interesting. Nah, once you're a Patriots fan, you're always a Patriots fan, right? All right, so when we discuss the high insulin, 100% right on. When we discuss the high insulin cause of insulin resistance, you guys are very familiar with that. When we eat high amounts of carbohydrates, high amounts of sugar, anytime we have excess sugar, we are going to raise insulin. Now, over time, this high sugar, it's chronically elevated sugar. We're eating all the time. Our diet is mostly consisting of carbohydrates. So that leaves insulin very high throughout the day. It never has a chance to come back down. So the pancreas and the beta cells of the pancreas release insulin. In the presence, when the pancreas senses that there is high sugar or any sugar, its job basically is to cause the sugar to get into the cells, or to help the sugar get into the cells. That's what insulin does. There's a little more nuance to that, but just so you're aware and you're following my thinking, is when sugar is elevated via carbs, insulin is released from the pancreas, and the insulin helps to drive the blood sugar into the cells. Now, if the cells are full up, they can't take any more, that leaves the glucose remaining outside the cell in the bloodstream. The pancreas senses that and secretes more and more insulin. Therefore, the insulin or the sugar school of thought will say that insulin resistance is caused by high insulinemia, high insulin in the bloodstream. Let me contrast that with the seed oil school of thought. And these physicians, these researchers, these studiers, they're just framing a little bit different picture in why the body or you become insulin resistant. Okay? First, before we get into the seed oils, let's just review fats in general. And we're gonna get really, really good at this, okay? When we describe a fat, we describe it either as a saturated fat, a monounsaturated fat, or a polyunsaturated fat. They are described this way by the number of double bonds they display. So if you think about a fat, you think about a chain of carbon atoms. So they're all in line, all these carbons, and they will have a hydrogen attached to the carbons. If it's a saturated fat, those that come from animals and some fruits, their carbon atoms are completely saturated with hydrogens. So there are no double bonds. A saturated fat is very stable. A saturated fat is linear. A saturated fat is, there's no chaos. He's a calm fat. Now, moving on to monounsaturated fat. Monounsaturated fats are going to be found in olives and avocados, macadamia nuts, and a few other things that are monounsaturated. The reason they're monounsaturated is because they have one area on the chain where a hydrogen is not attached to a carbon. And so there lies, or you can have a double bond in that area. One double bond, mono, one, unsaturated fat. So there's going to be one double bond that is open. It's open to being hit upon by oxygen. That is called oxidation. When we're talking about fats, the true term is peroxidation, but I think you guys will hear oxidation and we will be on the same wavelength, okay? Terms do matter, but I also want to make it simple for you to understand. A polyunsaturated fat is one that has more than one double bond. So you can see chain links and there'll be, these carbons, and then there'll be double bonds. The double bonds make a polyunsaturated fat very unstable. When we think about polyunsaturated fats, we think about omega-3s and omega-6s. There's also omega-9s. These are polyunsaturated fatty acids. When we discuss omega-3s and omega-6 and omega-9, they are essential, meaning our body does not make them. There's two instances where omega-6 occur naturally in animals, okay? We may or may not get to that. I'm just trying to lay a foundation of understanding what fats are and how we describe fats, because it's going to lead into how insulin resistance can occur, okay? These fats that we consume are either labeled as a saturated fat, a monounsaturated fat, and a polyunsaturated fat. A monounsaturated fat is considered the little darling of all the fats that we consume. Why? I'm not sure, but I think propaganda and just programming us to believe, whether it's true or not, whether monounsaturated fats are the healthiest for us. Olive oil, avocado oil, nuts. These are things that we've been told to consume more of. I'm not saying that's a good thing or a bad thing, but they asked us to replace our saturated fat with monounsaturated fat. Now, anytime we have a double bond that it's exposed to peroxidation, we are causing free radicals. We are causing inflammation, but just less of the inflammation with a monounsaturated fat. A saturated fat is very stable. There's no chaos and there's no peroxidation. Polyunsaturated fats, highly unstable. highly oxidized. Over time, consuming polyunsaturated fats in excess leads to inflammation. Okay? Now, being essential, our body can't make it, and our body needs it to survive. We need omega-3s and we need omega-6s. You've been told that omega-3s are basically inhibiting of inflammation, and that they cause less platelet aggregation. In fact, just to get your mind thinking of an analogy, when you go to surgery, one of the things that you are told to stop prior to surgery, besides aspirin or anything else, but omega-3s. Omega-3s decrease platelet aggregation so they can increase bleeding time. So we don't want you to bleed during surgery, we don't want you to take aspirin, but we also don't want you to take omega-3 fatty acids like your fish oil. So we want you to stop those at least a week in advance so we don't increase your risk of bleeding or having trouble cauterizing the area that we're working on. So what about omega-6s? You've pretty much now are on board with that. Oh my gosh, these are bad and they cause inflammation and they cause platelet aggregation and then they lead to vasoconstriction. I'm not denying that omega-6s do that, but we also need omega-6. We need a balance. Since the early 1950s, the production of seed oils has gone up and up and up. So not only the production, but also the consumption, because we were told not to consume saturated fat. For the most part, they push these man-made seed oils on us. The 3 S's, soy, sunflower, and safflower. The 3 C's, corn, canola, and cottonseed. Rice bran and grapeseed. Those are the big 8. And if they're in excess, what's excess? Well, we went from eating 2 grams of omega-6 to eating 20 grams of omega-6 per day. That is a lot, folks. We should not be consuming omega-6 in excess like that. We want about a 1-to-1 ratio of omega-3 to omega-6. Now, why are these omega-6 polyunsaturated fatty acids so detrimental? Why? Well, research has shown that these essential fatty acids in the form of omega-6, specifically linoleic acid. When you see linoleic acid, think omega-6, think seed oils. Linoleic acid is involved in insulin resistance. So I'm going to back up here and I'm going to talk about the cell membrane. Because if we don't understand the cell, we're not going to understand insulin resistance. Recall that every cell in our body has a membrane around it. That membrane has a dual layer or a bilayer of fat called phospholipids. And that layer, those 2 layers of fat, in between, there's cholesterol and there's proteins, and there's also something called a lipid raft. And there could be multiple lipid rafts all the way around this cell in the membrane. The lipid raft, according to the seed oil school of thought for insulin resistance, this lipid raft is very, very important. Why? Because inside the cell are insulin type receptors. One of them is called GLUT4. GLUT4, whenever sugar is in our bloodstream, he takes an elevator from the inside of the cell to that lipid bilayer, specifically to the lipid raft. He comes to the lipid raft. Now, in the seed oil school of thought, you can either have a bummed or broken GLUT4 receptor, or you can have a bummed out lipid raft. If either one of those things occur, according to the seed oil school of thought, we get insulin resistance, or we have higher risk of getting insulin resistance. So let's review. We have cells in our body, and every cell has a cell membrane, and every cell membrane is made of phospholipid bilayer, a fatty layer inside there. And between the lipid bilayer is cholesterol and proteins and sugar, and they make up this membrane. And there's also something called a lipid raft in this membrane. The lipid raft is important for glucose receptors to meet at that membrane, and they open the door to the insulin that's outside. In order to get sugar into the cell, the insulin has to meet up with his receptor, and then the receptor opens his door, and then sugar can come into that particular cell. If the receptor's broken, we got a mess. If the lipid raft is broken, we got a mess. The seed oil school of thought has been doing research and have investigated whether or not these seed oils can disrupt that lipid raft, basically destroying it. If the lipid raft is destroyed, the insulin receptor has nowhere to meet on the surface of the cell to accept the knock, knock, knock of the insulin in the bloodstream to say, hey, you guys, open up your doors. We got some sugar. I'm just escorting it in. And if there's no receptor, guess what? The sugar stays in the bloodstream. When the sugar stays in the bloodstream, insulin levels go up. Over time, this leads to insulin resistance. So, from my perspective, insulin resistance is a cause of both elevated blood sugar and seed oil consumption. It's not one or the other. I think it's both. And if you guys see where, if they're working hand in hand, because picture this. Processed foods have seed oils, and they also have sugar. There's plenty of sugar in processed foods. There's plenty of seed oils in processed foods. They are working like a little team to destroy our cells. When we get all of this oxidation going on, we run into situations of chronic oxidation, chronic inflammation, and basically cells that just don't work very well. Now, with that being said, I know that I gave you a lot of information here, but if you have questions, let me know. Lucy, I know you were talking or trying to learn more about lipid rafts, and honestly, I've just kind of picked up on this over the past 2 weeks about these lipid rafts. Yes, of course we would say, oh yes, seed oils are bad, avoid the omega-6, they're very inflammatory, those are linoleic acid, LAs, and we really need to avoid them. And then there's other like doctors and cardiologists, and they're telling you to eat the seed oils, eat these omega-6s. Why? Because they lower LDL. So that, you guys, is a reductionist way of thinking about heart disease. If you only hang your hat on the fact that LDL is the cause of your heart attacks, then we are missing so many other things. Right now, we can't even, you got the seed oil and the sugar people clashing. You got the plant and animal people clashing. And we narrow it all down as a doctor to, if your LDL is high, you're doomed. But when we consume these seed oils, I want to give you just a little bit more of a picture here. That fat around, or that supports the membrane, it wants to be very stable. It does not like loosey-goosey things. Saturated fat is very stable. So saturated fat in a cell membrane is very stable and very tight. He's very linear. There's no double bonds, so there's no oxidation going on in a cell that is made up of saturated fat. But when we consume polyunsaturated fat in excess, those PUFAs go in and replace the saturated fat and make the cell membrane more flexible, more loosey-goosey. You would think that that is a good thing. It is not. It becomes more flexible because a polyunsaturated fat that has a double bond here, it has bends in it. So it's, carbon, double bond, carbon, carbon, double bond, and then they branch off so they can bend wherever there is a double bond. And so you get kinks in a chain of polyunsaturated fat. That is a problem. And it's a problem if those polyunsaturated fats get into the cell membrane and they can be oxidized. So now that cell is at risk of being damaged. When fat cells take up polyunsaturated fats, they can get inside. They sit inside. A fat cell holds fat, right? If it's a majority of polyunsaturated fatty acids, that is a sick fat cell. I mean, fat cells are sick, but they're really sick when they have polyunsaturated fats inside of them. They destroy the mitochondria. How do they do that? Well, mitochondria have membranes too. And if they get inside the cell, the mitochondria are at risk. Overall, in the grand scheme of things, you guys, polyunsaturated fats in excess are not good. We need a balance. We need a balance of these polyunsaturated fatty acids, omega-3s and omega-6s. We are meant to have them. We would die if we did not have linoleic acid, okay? We just have too much of it because they're feeding it to us. We may not have enough omega-3. So you guys just go and say, if I'm going to eat all these polyunsaturated fats, right? I'm just going to even it out by taking a whole bunch of omega-3s. I'm going to go buy some fish oil. But let me just tell you guys, the fish oil, by the time we get it and we ingest it, is already rancid. Another name for rancid is oxidized. So it's already disturbed. It's no good. You might as well just eat full-on omega-6s and not worry about it. I would not suggest taking in omega-3s in the form of a capsule because it's already been oxidized sitting in the bottle, even prior to that. So how are you getting your omega-3s? Well, you can eat fish. But then, where my brain goes, I think about fish and I think about how they're raised. Am I really getting wild caught salmon? Or am I being faked out? Oh, you can tell by the color, Dr. Jensen. Well, what if they injected that fish with kind of a darker reddish orange dye and it fakes you out? You see, farm-raised salmon is horrible because they feed the fish, guess what? Grains, corn, which are, yes, you guessed it, linoleic acid, polyunsaturated fats in the form of linoleic omega-6 fatty acids. You're consuming the fish that was fed with the crap you're trying to avoid. So you're supposed to eat wild-caught fish that are not fed these polyunsaturated fatty acids through grains, corn, canola, all of the polyunsaturated fatty acid seed oils that we're supposed to avoid. Whew. I know it sounds complicated, but this goes straight to, even with my current diet, I eat an animal-based diet, and I choose organic, grass-fed, grass-finished cattle to consume. Now, can I find that all the time? No. Sometimes I can't find organic, grass-fed, grass-finished beef. A lot of times I will just go with, okay, they're grass-fed. A lot of times I can get grass-fed and grass-finished. Sometimes I can't. But I try to get as close to grass-fed as possible because a grass-fed beef has more omega-3s. If it's been cooped up in a pen and fed grain, it's being fed omega-6 through grains, corn. So basically, we are eating the animals and trying to avoid seed oils when they're eating seed oils. I mean, it's a really crazy concept. But good news is, if we had to make a choice of eating polyunsaturated fatty acids through processed foods, ultra-processed foods, or eating polyunsaturated fats in animals, I'm going to choose the polyunsaturated fats in animals, omega-6s, versus a grain-fed cow. You guys can make your own decisions, but Midwest Ribeye, thank you for joining, and yeah, we'll catch up with you later. And Dino, thanks for joining over there on YouTube. So the Continental Cat asks, what are your thoughts on coconut fat added to coffee? So coconut is a saturated, in fact, there is more saturated fat in coconut oil than there is in a ribeye steak. You know, people get this idea that I got to avoid saturated fat because the doctor told me to avoid saturated fat. But in the same breath, the doctor will tell you to cook, instead of with butter, saturated fat, they'll tell you to cook with coconut oil. You guys, coconut oil is more saturated than red meat. It's like 60 to 70% saturated fat in coconut oil. But it's a medium chain saturated fat. And it is somewhere between medium chain, C10, C12, somewhere in there, carbons. So when you say C whatever, that's the amount of carbons in the chain, right? And they're saturated, so they're gonna have a hydrogen, there's no double bonds. So from that perspective, it's good. Medium chains, saturated fat, and short chain, saturated fat, are meant, they're basically born to be burned. So the question is, what are my thoughts on coconut fat? As far as a saturated fat in the medium chain category, it's a good choice. However, it is a plant. So I choose no plants. We as animals, we humans are animals, we're mammals. We don't assimilate plant fat like we assimilate 100% bioavailable, nutrient-dense animal fats. So personally, I don't put coconut oil in my coffee. I'm going to put heavy cream, I'm going to put butter, but I'm going to avoid plant fats in my diet. You can decide what you want to do, but that's my thoughts on it. So great question. Derek says, hi, I'm from Southwest Ontario. Is there an ideal or preferred ratio of monounsaturated omega-6 saturated fats you might recommend for our diet? Okay, let's break this question down. Let's review. Okay, you mixed up your question, and that's okay, because I need to know where you guys are when it comes to understanding this. Okay, so I'm going to review. Fat is either saturated in the form of a long chain fatty acid, a medium chain fatty acid, or a short chain fatty acid. That's saturated. okay? That means there are no double bonds. It's very stable. There's no peroxidation, no oxidation of saturated fat. You could burn butter all day long and it's not going to oxidize, okay? Now, there are monounsaturated fats. Monounsaturated fats have one unstable double bond. Examples are olive, avocado, and nuts, okay? Macadamia nuts, to be more specific. Then the third category of fat is polyunsaturated. These are basically your essential fatty acids, your omega-3s and your omega-6s. Omega-6 are considered in a broad category inflammatory, and omega-3s help to neutralize the inflammation. So, is there a ratio of saying, I'm going to eat this much saturated fat and this much monounsaturated fat and this much polyunsaturated fat? No, there is not a certain ratio. You could not eat any monounsaturated fat. There's no essential monounsaturated fats. There's only essential polyunsaturated fats in the form of omega-6 and omega-3s. Your omega-3s, just to break it down, omega-3s, the PUFAs, the polyunsaturated fats, omega-3s are ALA, alpha-linolenic acid. I might be going way too deep right now. I'm not sure. Okay, omega-3s. Think of EPA and DHA. EPA and DHA, that's what's in your omega-3 when you go buy them. In our body, when we consume the essential omega-3 in the form of ALA, it's in our plant-based and our animal-based foods, we will convert that ALA to EPA and DHA. Those are the necessary breakdown, guys, all right? ALA is found in plants as an omega-3, but the conversion of ALA to EPA and DHA is very slight. You barely can convert ALA of the plant source to EPA and DHA. Animal ALA, all day long, you can convert to EPA and DHA. Those are the kind of the breakdown products, okay? So what will vegans do? If their ALA is not converting, what is another source? algae. Algae has the breakdown. So these people will consume algae as a plant source to avoid animals. Now, is there a ratio of 3s to 6? Yes. A 1-to-1 ratio. Some people will even go as high as 4-to-1, omega-6 to 1 omega-3. I do not recommend that. I don't even really recommend 2-to-1. But our current consumption of omega-6s is 28-to-1. And so now you can piece this all together about how and why insulin resistance and diabetes and heart disease and kidney disease and cancer and dementia are also prevalent. Yes, we're consuming sugar. We are over consuming sugar. But could we be consuming even more seed oils? It's in everything, you guys. Even when you think you're eating something healthy. Let me give you an example. Peanut butter. Peanut butter is full of omega-6. So you think that you're eating. What about nuts? You're eating nuts, which are high in omega-6. What about farm-raised chicken? You think, oh my gosh, Dr. Jensen, it's from an animal. It is. But what is the animal eating? It's eating grains, high in omega-6. Do I eat chicken? No, I don't. Because do you know how hard it is to find even a pasture-raised chickie that will give me pasture-raised eggs? Very difficult. But that pasture-raised chickie has more omega-3s. If he's fed grain, he's going to be high in omega-6, linoleic acid. Whew. What is so bad about linoleic acid? I'm glad you asked me. Well, when it converts, you know how ALA converts to DHA and EPA? Guess what arachidonic acid, I just said the answer. Guess what linoleic acid breaks down to? Arachidonic acid. Do we need arachidonic acid? Yes. Do we need it in the amount that we are getting? No, absolutely not. So it is important for us to look at what we're consuming. I say don't eat anything in a box or a bag with a barcode. It's full of them. It's full of omega-6. I don't suggest eating grain-fed chicken, but if that's the only thing that you have available, grain-fed chicken and grain-fed beef, eat it, please. It is better than eating a box of fried shrimp or fish sticks or chicken in a box or anything in a box, lasagna, anything that comes in a box. Just go to the grocery store and go through anything that comes in a box or bag, and you will see the most common seed oil is soybean oil. High amounts are in everything that comes in a box or a bag. It's really unbelievable. And see, there's really no regulation to the amount of seed oils because the American Heart Association, the American Diabetes Association, all of these three-letter agencies push the consumption of these seed oils because seed oils lower LDLs. You guys, remember, polyunsaturated fats are oxidized because of the high amounts of double bonds in the chain. If that is inside your LDL, it's going to be oxidized. The whole LDL particle is going to be oxidized because it's carrying polyunsaturated in the form of omega-6 seed oils. So that LDL is going to be damaged beyond. Those are the ones. So yeah, you could be lowering your LDL with seed oils. In the meantime, you're causing all of the bad guys of LDLs, the oxidized ones. It's the oxidized LDLs that are involved in the plaquing that's going on in our arteries. They didn't cause it. They're just being disturbed. They're being oxidized. They're going rancid. You're basically getting rusting inside of your body, inside of the cells, and we don't know it. It's so important that you guys grasp this concept on fats because you've been told not to eat saturated fat, which are the safest, most stable fat. So you're going to lean toward these monounsaturated ones. Okay? You're going to lean toward olive oil and you're going to lean toward avocados and you're going to say, well, these are good, but they're plants, you guys. They are plants. And we as humans, animals, mammals, cannot assimilate a plant fat like we can an animal fat. So when it comes right down to it from a health perspective, I say eat what we are, animals, and eat the animals that eat the plants. There are some animals, i.e. cow, sheep, lamb, bison, buffalo, they eat plants. They don't eat mammals. So we're going to eat them that have processed these plants into short chain fatty acids, and there's protein, and we eat the animal. We're not eating the plant. So does Dr. Jensen eat plants? I absolutely do. Dr. Jensen, I don't understand. Yes, you do. I eat plants as long as they're filtered through a ruminant animal. Cow, bison, buffalo, deer, sheep, lamb. Yes, those. Yes, I eat plants as long as they're filtered through a cow. Cows were meant to eat it. We are not. Now that will clash, highly clash, with a plant-based person or even a person who eats plants on a regular basis in addition to their animals. They're eating both. I used to. I don't anymore. Because I find out about plants and the structure and the chemicals within them that mess with our body and the way our body functions. Now, can those plant-based people function? Sure, as long as they are eating some animals. Well, Dr. Jensen, most plant-based people don't eat animals. Okay, then they better be supplementing their diets with the foods they need. They need essential fatty acids in the form of omega-3 and omega-6. They also need essential amino acids. You cannot get them all from a plant. You will have to mix and match some grains. You'll have to mix and match like beans and rice to get a complete protein. You're going to have to take algae. Well, that's a plant, isn't it? Well, no, it's an algae. You see, plant-based people have to be a little more cognizant of what they're eating so they don't get deficient in minerals and nutrients, vitamins, minerals, all of these things, okay? Whereas an animal-based person could simply eat the cow, everything from the cow, and be fine and dandy. Even if that cow ate grains, which I don't recommend, but if you have a choice, Hey, in our household, we still eat some some grain-fed animals. We do. So hopefully this helps. And Derek, hopefully this answers your question. Let me know if you're getting this, if that answered your question. The continental cat also adds to this. That's correct about fish oil. So omega-3 fish oil that comes in capsules that we buy over the counter. They also said that they're very high correlation, not causation. Continental cat is making this very specific. Keyword is correlated with prostate cancer. Now, think about this, you guys. It's not so much that we are eating the fish oil. It's the fact that it's already been oxidized. It's rancid. And it is destroying our cells, whether you know it or not. And I guess I'm trying my hardest to just provide you with information. You do not need to do what I do. I'm going to get my omega-3s from grass-fed butter, grass-fed heavy cream, and grass-fed cows. I'm going to try to choose grass-fed because they're going to be higher in omega-3s. I'm going to try to avoid anything that's been grain-fed, whether it be a chicken, a cow, a fish. I guarantee you, if you ate grass-fed or wild-caught animals, you're going to be healthier. Your cells are going to be healthier. Your mitochondria are going to be healthier. And once people really find out about polyunsaturated fatty acids, they're going to change their tune. They really are. You could never eat enough omega-3s that would make up for how much omega-6s you're eating. It's everywhere, you guys. Omega-6 linoleic acid is everywhere. It's in everything. It's in people say, well, what about mayonnaise? Look at your jar of mayonnaise. It's full of soy or safflower or sunflower oil. Think about how they took seed oils. If you were to even look at the process of making a seed oil, they are not from vegetables, you guys. They'll say they're from vegetables. They are not. They take the seeds of these plants, the big 8, okay? And they'll heat it at very, very high temperatures. And they will pressurize it. And then they'll clean it by chlorine, right? They gotta bleach it. And then they gotta deodorize it, because if you smell rancidity, open up your jar of omega-3 fatty acids. Open up the omega-3 bottle and smell it. You guys will be turned off. And so what they will do is they will deodorize it. What, Dr. Jensen? Yeah, so you don't smell that rancidity. You mean they do all that? Yes, you guys. In fact, the very first use of one of the seed oils called cottonseed oil was used as the oil for lamps, to light your lamp, to get a flame. That's where cottonseed oil was first used. There are other forms of like cottonseed and other oils that were used as a lubricant on the ships of during the war, during World War I and II. That's when we started getting these seed oil uses, right? And then somehow they got into our diet. I don't know, you guys. I think this is just, I think it's corrupt. I can't see that there is one good thing about eating omega-6. I don't see it. But you guys, we need them. But we just don't need them in as much that we're getting. We need omega-6. It's an essential fatty acid, meaning our body can't make it, so we need to get it from our diet. I'm going to get mine from my cows and my deer. There is omega-6 in that. There's 2 of them that naturally occur in animals. Naturally occur. You know, the omega-6 naturally occur in the cows I'm eating. So I'm going to get it in the animals. I'm not going to eat grains. I'm not going to eat seed oils. But that's me. You guys might veer off. But I just need you to know what it's doing to your system. If you continuously eat these seed oils, I think that you're putting yourself at risk for chronic diseases like diabetes. And if you're at risk for diabetes and you get diabetes, guess what you're also at risk for? Heart disease, dementia, and cancer. So is it a coincidence that it was these omega-3s correlating to prostate cancer? I don't know. I think more in terms of omega-6s destroying our cell membrane, getting embedded in our cell membrane of the cell itself as well as the mitochondria, causing oxidation. Even omega-3s can oxidize. Remember, they're a polyunsaturated fatty acid. That's why we don't need so many. We just need a 1-to-1 ratio, you guys. Hi, tiny minds of foods, in foods, tiny minds, tiny mini foods. Tiny mini foods is listening over there. Keep going. You're trying to do a play on words, Derek, with the Jeep thing. Thank you for the detailed recap. You're very welcome. Okay. Are there any other questions in regards to seed oils, insulin resistance? I know that this is a complicated subject, especially when I was so gung-ho on teaching you about the sugar theory of insulin resistance. It's still there, you guys. Don't forget it. You consume sugar in the form of carbohydrates, you're going to get insulin resistance over time. There's not very many people who are able to consume carbohydrates in excess on a regular basis and not get diabetes. Even the most muscle-bound person at some point is going to get insulin resistant because the cells are going to get full up of sugar. And that cell isn't going to accept anymore, whether it's a muscle cell, a fat cell, an eyeball cell, a skin cell. It's going to get full up, too much, way too much, okay? And we are going to get insulin resistance. And then just in time, you're going to be a diabetic. In all this time, You are causing destruction in your arteries. All of that sugar that can't get into the cells, that's causing insulin resistance, is also damaging your artery lining. And then you smoke or you drink or you are exposed to heavy metals or microplastics. All of these things cause more injury to that lining of the artery. And then guess what? A clot forms. It hardens, and a clot forms, and it hardens. And all of those debris, LDLs and platelets and white blood cells and red blood cells, all of it continue to plaque, to plaque, to plaque, and then boom, arteries closed. Polyunsaturated fats, another cause of insulin resistance that I'm just starting to talk about. I'm sure that there are other influencers, other doctors, other people doing Instagrams and YouTubes and all of this who are talking about polyunsaturated fatty acids, PUFAs, in the form of omega-6, how they're damaging the lipid raft on the cell membrane, disrupting the insulin receptor. So now insulin's not going to open up the door anymore. So guess what? High sugar in the bloodstream leads to more insulin. We get insulin resistance. We get diabetes. Maybe one and two different mechanisms, all causing the same thing. Why have a school of thought? Why put all of your chips in the sugar pot? Why put them all in the seed oil pot? There are doctors out there, okay? One of them is Dr. Chris Kenobi. He thinks everything related to, I'm not putting him down. I'm just mentioning his name. I'm just mentioning his name. He is all on board with seed oils as the major cause of insulin resistance. Because why? Because he says that our sugar consumption might have jumped up, boom, 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 but then it leveled off, and it's even kinda, because we've been told that avoid sugar, you guys, avoid sugar. So it's kinda actually coming down. But what's happening to seed oils? Up. So in his mind, with his studies, it's all about seed oils. Same with Dr. Kate Shanahan. She's very similar, that if we continue to eat these seed oils, everybody's going to be diabetic. I'm not disagreeing with either one of their theories, but I'm also not going to say, I'm not going to put all my chips into one category and say, this is how you get insulin resistance. In fact, if you were to talk to Mr. Ironman, Mr. Glucopharin, Peter Piotr, he will tell you that it's iron causing insulin resistance. So I don't think Piotr puts all of his chips into all iron causing insulin resistance. I'm sure he believes that sugar is in excess is a cause. I'm sure he also agrees that excess amounts of omega-6 in the form of linoleic acid is also a cause. I think anybody in their right mind, in fact, I think if you were to talk to Chris Kenobi, Dr. Chris Kenobi, he would also agree that it's multifactorial. And we need to keep that all in mind. So as far as I'm concerned, if I avoid plants, I'm going to avoid non-heme iron, which Piotr is talking about, right? As the cause of insulin resistance. So just don't eat plants. Don't take any vitamins because that's full of non-heme iron. Non-heme iron is not bioavailable. We cannot absorb it. Barely 3%. Versus heme iron that comes from red meat animals, deer, bison, buffalo, sheep, lamb, cow. That is heme iron. Easily absorbed. Easily usable. Versus non-heme iron, it's sitting in your tissues. It's building up over decades of eating synthetic non-heme iron, taking non-heme synthetic vitamins, using a cast iron pan. These are all sources of non-heme iron. Eating plants, even if you think, I'm going to eat a whole food diet, Dr. Jensen. Okay, great. That's better than the standard American diet, yet you are exposing yourself to more and more non-heme iron. Non-heme iron also disrupts our cells. It also influences whether or not that insulin receptor is going to take up sugar. So it's multifactorial, you guys. It really is. So you ask me, why do I do what I do? I don't want to take any chances. If there's no nutritional value to plants, which there isn't, we can live without them. Plants are carbohydrates. There's no essential carbohydrates, zero, none. You could go the rest of your life without eating a plant. That means corn, canola, cottonseed, safflower, sunflower seed, soy, cottonseed, all of them. You could go your whole life and not need them. If you ate things that ate omega-6, or like cows have naturally occurring omega-6 in the form of, I believe it's conjugated linoleic acid, okay? So I'm not going to eat plants in order to get those things. But again, you are the consumer. You're the maker of your body. I think anybody who goes from a standard American crapola diet, if they ate just plant-based, they're going to heal. They're going to feel amazing, amazing. If a standard American diet person eating crapola went to a carnivore diet, they're going to feel amazing because they're not eating the crap, the processed foods. So there is something to be said by eating just a plant-based diet because you're not getting the bad omega-6s either. You're cleaning things up. You're probably also not getting sugar. So hopefully this is all tying together. I wanted to join in because, I did a reel today talking about polyunsaturated fats and insulin resistance. And I thought, hey, let's just do an hour or so and just break it down. It's when doctors or highly educated people start talking with all these big terms, it gets hard to put it in simplistic things that you can put, I have to take notes, you guys. I took notes today to figure out how am I going to break this down so people can understand. How can I break down fats, saturated, monounsaturated, and polyunsaturated? Okay. Then how can I break those polyunsaturates down into basically what we think about is omega-3 and omega-6. One is good, one is bad. It's not so easy because they're both needed, but just not in excess. We don't want this omega-6 to this omega-3. We want it down here, but we also don't want it up here, where, I'm just going to eat a whole bunch of omega-6 and try to balance it out with the omega-3s. I just don't think that's good thinking. Okay? So that's what it's about. We can always do another one of these this weekend. I do live streams every Saturday and Sunday. Saturday at 9 a.m. Central, Sunday at 10 a.m. Central. We can revisit these things. You guys, I've spent the last few years studying these things. So if you have to, and I'm not saying that it takes a special brain because like a doctor brain. I know people who know as much as I do, who basically have no credentials. They were probably just working in a grocery store stocking shelves. It doesn't matter how much schooling you've had to learn these things. I want to encourage everybody to gain as much knowledge as you possibly can. I used to be in the camp a long time ago, the doctor camp, saying LDL is bad, lower it at all costs so you don't get coronary artery disease. I never really knew about saturated, monounsaturated. I regurgitated the information they gave us. Choose olive oil. Get rid of butter and red meat and eat lean sources of chicken and turkey. Get fish. Eat Mediterranean, whatever that means. I mean, is it an American Mediterranean or is it the real Mediterranean? Because they eat meat. Okay. So, I was there. I was prescribing statins up until probably 2020, 2021. Kind of adamant about it, but not really. If you chose to, if you chose not to take a statin, I wasn't going to get all huffy puffy. I just said, okay, if you have a heart attack, okay. I knew carbs were bad. I just didn't put it all together. It's, when we educate ourselves, we start out with a whole bunch of dots, just all over, scattered dots. And then we slowly connect the dots. And then it builds a bigger picture and you're going, oh my gosh, how could I have missed all of this? You didn't know. You didn't know because all you had was scattered dots. And it's what they programmed you to know. You just regurgitated certain things. LDL bad, HDL good. Do you know what raises HDL? Saturated fat. Yes, exercise. But eating saturated fat raises HDL, the so-called good guy, right? And if you just had more good guys, it really doesn't matter how many bad guys you have. These are the things that we were taught. Then we got to be, oh, there's only certain bad guys. Those are the small, dense guys. Well, how do they get small and dense? Oxidation. How do they get oxidized? The polyunsaturated omega-6 goes in and displaces the good saturated fat of the cell membrane of the lipoprotein particle. Now he becomes oxidized, damaged, rancid, all of that. And now he's small and dense and angry, and he's going to go do naughty things in your bloodstream. So this is where we're at, folks. We're still on a learning journey. We're still connecting the dots. I might be finding that some things I'm saying is wrong, and I'm going to tell you about it. I am wrong about my past and pushing low LDL at all costs. We need LDL. We can talk about that another day. Today, I wanted to focus on insulin resistance, whether it was from the polyunsaturated seed oil school of thought, or was insulin resistance from the sugar school of thought. I say both. I think these schools of thoughts, if you were to break this all down, they'll say, yeah, you're right, Dr. Jensen. It's probably a combination of both. Plus, if we start talking to Peter, the Mr. Glucopharin, the Iron Man, we're going to say, oh yeah, I think that non-heme iron has a role to play in this, in all of this as well, this insulin resistance. So, you guys, let's just keep learning together, and thank you for joining. Lord willing, I will be back on Saturday, 9 a.m. Central, Sunday, 10 a.m. Central. On the weekends, I'm live on Facebook and Instagram. Go over to Facebook, Center Stage Primary Care, like and subscribe, do the thing. On YouTube, I'm at Iron Lady Doc. In fact, I'm Iron Lady Doc on YouTube, Rumble, Twitter or X, and Instagram. So find me, share. If you're finding success in learning about what I'm going over, share it with somebody you think might also benefit. Okay, that's how we do it. And like I said, if I'm wrong, I'll regurgitate everything I said and say I was wrong. Let's learn it correctly. All right, you guys. So everybody have a great rest of your day. Happy Wednesday. See ya.